Good afternoon, everyone. I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for August 4th, 2026. It is 1:30 p.m. Welcome to councillors assembled here. Welcome to administrative staff, members of the gallery, those watching on our Zoom link, and those who will watch later on our YouTube channel. We are convening for the first time since July 14th. A great deal has transpired in that interim. On July 18th, we celebrated Parks Day. On July 20th, we, or at least those so inclined, celebrated the 25th anniversary of the establishment of local government in Jasper, the anniversary of the birth of the specialized municipality of Jasper. On the 22nd, we commemorated the second anniversary of the evacuation of the community with a community barbecue. On the 24th of July, we stood aside and allowed residents to commemorate the second anniversary of the wildfire that impinged our community as they saw fit. And yesterday was perhaps the most somber commemoration of all, as it marked the second anniversary of the loss in the line of duty in Jasper National Park of Alberta wildland firefighter Morgan Kitchen. Before commencing today's proceedings, I ask that we solemnly observe a moment of silence in honor of Morgan and his ultimate sacrifice on behalf of our community, and in respect, appreciation, and compassion for and with his family. Thank you all. We can then commence with today's proceedings. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? If not, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented. Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have for approval three sets of minutes. Firstly, the minutes of the regular meeting of July 7th, 2026. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, I would look for a motion to approve those minutes as presented. Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have before us the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of July 14th, 2026. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? And again, if not, I would look for a motion to approve those minutes as presented. Councillor Frechette, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That's carried. And finally, we have before us the minutes of the special council meeting of July 14th, 2026. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? And if not, I would look for a motion to approve those minutes as presented. Councillor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, delegations. We have no delegations registered, and I look to the gallery and I see no one coming forward. This is the point in our agenda, both at council and at committee of the whole, to hear from any member of the public with respect to any matter on the agenda. As no one is coming forward, I will say we have concluded with agenda item 4. Move to agenda item 5, correspondence. And again, there has no correspondence been added to today's agenda. There is nothing arising I take it. So that takes us to agenda item 6, new business, and we will begin with the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center progress update. Director Altoff and Mr. Ireland. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland and Council. We're very pleased to be back here to present another progress update from the JRCC. As you've just mentioned to my left, Mr. Logan Ireland is here to present a deep dive into the ongoing wildfire-affected water and sanitary infrastructure rehabilitation project. So we'll begin with a regular overview of our recovery priorities and progress against them, and then we'll conclude with the more detailed overview of the ongoing infrastructure project. Okay, thank you, Emma. Okay, so beginning as we always do with debris removal. Things are not moving very quickly on this file because this file is nearly complete. We are standing at 97.24% of properties with demolition permits having been issued certificates of completion. In town, that's 339 out of 341. So only 2 properties in the town site that have demolition permits have yet to receive certificates of completion. The remaining properties are out of town. They are accommodations outside of the town site. 100% of properties in town have had debris removed from them. And so, as I said, very near to completion on that file, with just a couple of properties left in town to receive their COCs. You can see it there in the file, or sorry, in the graph, indication of the degree to which that work is very near completion, with 368 of those properties having been confirmed safe for human habitation and ready for rebuild. Moving to interim housing, being that we are in the middle of the summer and interim housing is essentially fully occupied. Very little movement week to week in interim housing. There are currently 427 households representing 773 individuals in the program. We have an unmet needs list of 224 households or 370 individuals. That list includes people who have applied to interim housing and have yet to receive an offer of housing. It also includes applicants who have been made an offer and have declined that offer, typically because they are asking for a unit at a different location or a different type of unit that isn't available at the time of that request. Landscaping and tree planting activities have been completed at in-town interim housing sites. So you'll see, for example, that some soil and seeding has happened at the United Church. Trees have been planted in the perimeter of some of the interim housing sites, both at the west and east ends of town. And we are quite happy with the results of that program, expecting those trees to flourish and grow along some of the berms, in particular at the edge of the railway, in between the railway and the interim housing site, which I think will be a long-term benefit to the community. Turning to the rebuilding of homes and businesses, we see continual movement on this graph, which we're always particularly watching for that purple bar to shrink and the green bar to grow as we add additional occupancy permits and people move back into homes, and more people move from that purple bar into the other red, orange, and yellow bars as they enter into the development and building permit process. So we are seeing continual movement on that month to month. That is summarized in this image here, where we see on a roughly month-to-month basis movement, the reduction in the purple bar and the growth of the green bar, which now sits at 48 occupancy permits issued. Diving a bit deeper into those numbers, there are 185 rebuilding properties in town that have been issued a building permit. That represents 402 dwelling units. 276 of those are replacement units for units lost in the wildfire, and 126 are net new units. So when we look then to occupancy, amongst those 48 occupancy permits account for 79 housing units that can now be occupied as a result of the rebuild. Turning to social recovery, the Pathfinders program continues with monthly meetups, and I highlight that this week because there was a particularly well-received monthly meetup just last week, which focused on processing grief and the complex emotions that accompany moving into a rebuilt home. It's an issue that we're hearing more and more about in the community, that people are very happily able to move into their rebuilt homes, but are experiencing a complex set of emotions when they do that. The mix of elation at having reached the end of that very difficult process, and I think some of the realizations that houses take a certain amount of time to build, and homes are built on a different timeline. And so the Pathfinders program in particular is looking for building out skills and knowledge to help people navigate that challenging process. We have been very pleased and honored to be contacted by some other communities that have experienced disaster in recent years to learn more about the Pathfinders program in the hope that they can reproduce something like it in their own communities. And most recently, I've been in conversation with people in the community of Tumbler Ridge, which you'll recall was the site of a tragic shooting incident earlier this year. And so Tumbler Ridge is very interested in developing something like the Pathfinders program to support recovery in their own community. And we're very honored to be supporting them in that work. Our Community Spiritual Circles program is continuing through the rest of the summer and into the fall. That will conclude in November of 2026. The Healing Through Fire program, which you'll recall last year, many residents of Jasper engaged with Parks Canada staff and Indigenous partners to participate in a program that takes place at Lake Annette, where people are guided around the lake and led by Parks Canada interpreters to learn a bit more about fire ecology, and then spend time with an Indigenous partner to learn more about Indigenous perspectives on wildfire and healing. That program is going to be repeated. It is being repeated currently in the summer as a visitor offer, and will be offered to school students at the Jasper High School and École de Rocher in September. The JRCC is currently working with the Canadian Red Cross to develop a case management system or a program to support residents transitioning out of interim housing and into permanent housing in the community. The recent funding announcement from the federal government to Parks Canada gave us clarity on the timeline for the interim housing program and makes us very aware of the need to start preparing residents for the eventual transition out of that program into the community. There are likely to be a range of complex challenges that accompany that for many residents. And so we're working with the Red Cross and putting together programs and supports and case management to help people navigate those challenges. Finally, as Mayor Ireland mentioned earlier, the JRCC hosted a 2-year wildfire commemoration community barbecue on the 22nd of July. It was very well attended and received a good deal of positive feedback. Some of the things we heard from participants was that they appreciated the informal, sort of open nature of the event, that people were able to connect with the people they wanted to talk to and engage in the way that they wanted to engage. So what we saw was some people sitting together and having very focused conversations about wildfire, their experiences since the wildfire. Other people simply enjoying a sunny afternoon in the park and enjoying the company of other community members, and everything in between. And we had great participation from the Resiliency Institute, Recovery Alberta, the Red Cross, of course, Municipal Council, senior leadership from Parks Canada, and a host of others. So we were quite pleased with the outcome of that event and grateful for everyone's participation. Moving to economic recovery, just an overview of the Commerce Continuity Initiative, which includes the Pop-Up Village on Connaught Drive, the temporary the interim industrial park in the S Block, as well as a laydown program. Looking first at the interim industrial park, the supplied temporary spaces, which are the CCANs in that area, are fully occupied. There is some space available for any other participants who would be able to supply their own CCANs or structures, but the CCANs supplied by the municipality through that program are fully occupied. With the laydown spaces, 10 of the 11 stalls in the laydown are occupied, so we have good participation there. The commercial pop-up has seen some reduced participation this year, and we have taken the decision to make this the final year of operation for the pop-up village. There are some activation events that will be taking place through the summer and into the fall, and be working with participants to transition them out of that program and to demobilize through the winter. We are conducting interviews with pop-up village and interim industrial park participants to better understand their long-term plans and recovery needs. And we are very happy to report that 3 of the businesses that have participated in the pop-up village program have reestablished permanent locations in Jasper, which I think is a great success and exactly the purpose of that program, to provide that bridge until those businesses could reestablish permanent locations. That is going to conclude the broad recovery update for this morning. I'll turn things now over to Logan Ireland to speak in more detail about the water wastewater rehabilitation project.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. Logan Ireland, Recovery Project Manager with the JRCC, here to provide an update for you on the progress and details of our site servicing project, which has been underway since May of 2026. As you know, following the 2024 wildfire, the municipality launched a coordinated underground servicing program so that fire-affected properties could reconnect to safe, reliable municipal water and sanitary services while reconstruction advanced. Phase 1 focused on wildfire impacted areas and damage to curb stops, service valve, and selected impacted laterals in 3 fire affected neighborhoods, which we'll go over in the next slide. Phase 2 combines eligible fire related repair work with renewal of aging rear lane sanitary infrastructure. That renewal program is not anticipated to be DRP or HARP eligible. We are completing it now because the wildfire-related work provides an opportunity for efficiency and cost savings. Phase 1 was targeted to be completed on August 7th, and we're happy to report that the last property was successfully actioned last Friday. So Phase 1 is now complete, pending papering and administrative work to confirm that everything is documented and sufficient for our submissions for financing and reporting. That included the Cabin Creek area, Lodgepole Poplar, and Moline Mayette neighborhoods. And we do have some maps included as well for more granularity on the locations. The extent of that work was curb stop or CC service valve replacement and laterals connecting both the water and sanitary lines into the properties. Whereas Phase 2 includes that work plus some renewal work to the sanitary main lines, which would be CIPP lining. Phase 2 is generally spoken about in 5 different areas, which we do have a map. You could consider them the 700 block of Connaught, the 700, 800, and 900 block of Patricia, and the 800 block of Geeky. That award has been authorized. We have 2 successful bidders, and it's more advantageous to the municipality to award to 2 different organizations for this tender, to have them advance the work simultaneously and ensure that we can complete the needed work before the freeze. This next slide provides a photo which helps to illustrate the work that is happening. This is a lot in Cabin Creek, so it has a specific additional challenge. So you'll see in the photograph that is taken from the sidewalk looking into the property, you can see a stem rising out of the excavation hole. Then beyond that, you can see some pipes connecting horizontally over the trench, and then the leasehold behind it. Those lines that you see horizontally on the screen, that is the shallow utility trench. And so Cabin Creek had a unique challenge wherein when we exposed the service valve, we also had to expose that sensitive newly installed utility trench. That trench is on leasehold property, so generally that would be the responsibility of the leaseholder. However, when our crews were exposing the CC, they also had to expose the trench. So it made sense for us to extend the laterals into property under that trench so that it only had to be excavated one time. contributing to the robustness of the service itself. And it was a nominal price increase that we were able to absorb. In other areas of town, we don't have that specific challenge to contend with. So generally speaking, our work would end at or near the property line. We'll be going down, replacing the CC valve and stem in some cases, or repairing it and the casing, and providing the leaseholder with a connection point at which they can bring their services to us. In some cases, we're working on already rebuilt properties, so the connection from the leaseholder may already be extended all the way out. And in some cases, we need to coordinate with the builder to ensure that we leave the leaseholder with connected services when we backfill the hole and complete that project. This next page shows a map to help illustrate where phase 1 happened. So we can see it's broken up into phase 1 south and phase 1 north. Cabin Creek comprised of the bulk of the project, and then there were about 6 properties in the R4 district, and then around 8 properties in the Moline-Mayette neighborhood. Continuing to the next slide, we can see that at the time of this report, we were near complete Moline-Mayette, and as I mentioned earlier, that was concluded on Friday. Phase 2 is shown in this next slide with 5 different schedules or general areas. And those schedules have been, as I mentioned, awarded to not quite awarded. They've been authorized to be awarded, and we're working with those contractors to finalize the papering. 3 schedules to one and 2 to another in a manner that is most advantageous to the municipality. We expect work to begin for phase 2 in August within the next week or 2, and we aim to have it finished, as I mentioned, before winter. A general breakdown of responsibilities as it pertains to servicing and connections between the municipality infrastructure and the leaseholders. The municipality's responsibility is the water and sanitary mains, the curb stops or CCs, and service valves, and approved municipal repair or rehabilitation work, such as is included with Tender 2 with the CIPP. The funding is municipal capital budget and eligible disaster recovery funding. Whereas the leaseholder and builder generally are responsible for any work on their property. Where that integrates with our work is in certain cases, such as with Cabin Creek, where we have that shallow utility trench to contend with. So looking ahead at the timeline, we are now finished phase 1, and we'll be working with the general contractors to commence phase 2 within the next week or 2. And then we'll be working with them to advance the projects. We'll be communicating with leaseholders, issuing public comms this week to all impacted neighborhoods. And then later on, once we have a more granular idea of which properties are impacted, as we did with phase 1, we'll contact those leaseholders with direct emails to let them know what to expect. And we've been doing door-to-door hangers as well, just to have another lane of communication to the leaseholders so they know what to expect. The primary goals there of communication are awareness of what's happening in your neighborhood, that your water and sewer is not going to be impacted if you're living in a house adjacent to one of these action properties, and that you can expect some additional noise and construction activity for roughly about half a day. It's generally taking us about maybe 3 to 4 hours to complete one project. And then we'll continue to document and work with DRP, HARP, and our other funding sources to finalize the papering and ensure proper closeout. Thank you.
Thanks, Logan. That will conclude our presentation for this morning and or this afternoon, I should say. And as always, we're more than happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you both. Councillor Frechette.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Director Olthoff. You were speaking about the laydown locations for our contractors. Is that what that's about? Is locations for them to keep their supply handy?
That is correct. Sorry, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Frechette. That is absolutely correct. And if maybe I'll just ask Mr. Ireland to provide a bit more detail about the laydown element of the CCI project.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Frechette. I'm happy to speak to that. We have 3 laydown programs in operation. One is in the S block. It's colloquially known as the concrete lot because it's next to the concrete plant. That program currently has 11 of 12 stalls filled. So contractors in town are able to rent that space from the municipality to store equipment and goods. And then we also have a laydown yard at the woodlot, which is a larger space. It's a little bit further outside of town. And the woodlot is another colloquial term for technically known as Site 2B. It's when you go towards Old Fort Point, and instead of turning left over the highway, you turn right. It used to be a Parks Canada managed camp there. And the municipality has been operating a laydown yard there as well. And then we have converted the snow dump into a clean soil storage program for contractors as well. And that is at about 95% capacity as well.
Okay, thank you for that. These laydown lots, is there a cost to the contractors?
Yes, there is a cost. It's based on a established rate from council last year, which is also takes into account the services or functionality that are available at that site. For a 200 meters squared area, it's roughly $500 per month.
Okay, so very reasonable in terms of the cost of it and the efficiency of it. I know I've spoken to a lot of the contractors, and of course that's been kind of the bane of their operation since the beginning of the wildfire, is where do they put their lay down stuff. They've got a lot of materials and equipment, and of course it's problematic with the streets, and so there is a cost, and it's $500. Has there been any pushback on that, or is it been well received in terms of the cost of it?
I would say it's been generally well received.
Okay, that's great, excellent. And just one other question, Mr. Ireland, you could probably answer this. The water issue in the Cabin Creek up against the hillside there. Do you have a status update on that? Where the creek has been problematic with some of the lots on the east end of the Cabin Creek neighborhood.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Diego.
Thanks, Mayor Ireland. I'll maybe answer that on behalf of administration. We're trying to make distinct some different roles of the municipality. Mr. Ireland over here to my right is working on behalf of the municipality in recovery on the utilities installation and all the matters that he just discussed. Another part of the municipality has been working as a leaseholder with our adjacent neighbors to try to coordinate efforts around the water issue that you mentioned, sort of the infiltration from Cabin Creek or groundwater into those properties. And in that capacity, we've worked with the homeowners to do an engineering study, which was requested by Parks, that identified the appropriate way to manage that groundwater. All leaseholders in that area have a copy of that study. Parks has accepted the study, and the recommendations have actually changed how another part of the municipality is handling things on the utility side. So our municipal utility department has allowed additional connections to the sanitary sewer system to allow those properties to do drainage from their property directly into the sanitary sewer on an ongoing basis. So there's a engineered solution that's been approved and accepted by Parks, and now it's really just a matter of each individual leaseholder as they rebuild, working with their contractor to implement the recommended solution on their property.
Thank you, CO Gibbon. That's all I have. Thank you.
Other questions from councillors? Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. And not a question, but one thing that stood out to me in this report before you, Director Olthoff, mentioned it was the fact that other disaster-affected communities are reaching out to the JRCC to learn more about the Pathfinders program. I think that's something that you should be really proud of. We never wanted to become experts in recovery from a disaster like this, but if something we've created here can help another community navigate the first few difficult months or years, I think that's a legacy we should celebrate. And I just want to thank you and your team for creating and championing this program. I think it takes vision to recognize that the lessons we're learning here shouldn't stay here. And unfortunately, with the impacts of climate change, as we're seeing more and more communities across the country are facing wildfires and floods and other disasters, none of us wanted to see that continue. But if it does, I'm really proud that Jasper may be able to help offer a bit of a roadmap and some hope to communities just beginning this journey that we've already started. And there's really a lot of value, I think, in turning our experience into something that helps others. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall, other questions? I have a couple then, perhaps for Mr. Ireland. The phase 1 and phase 2 all relate to site servicing in residential fire impacted areas. What is happening in the non-residential commercial areas, both in the downtown area and across in the Stanwright Industrial Park?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Ireland. In the downtown areas that were impacted by the fire, those municipal services would have been actioned individually. There's fewer of them, so it made less sense to include them in the overarching project. Whereas in Stanwright, the municipality has a motivation to explore a more broad program there, which could include such things as increased line sizing. And so the decision was made to advance these residential areas now and address Stanwright at a later date when the full scope has been identified and funding has been resourced for that as well.
Thank you for that. And still dealing with the non-residential areas. And I don't necessarily expect you to have any sort of solid answer, but I have certainly heard from impacted commercial leaseholders about the cost, which they see as a prohibitive cost, of reinstalling non-municipal services. Has that come to the attention of the JRCC or the municipality? And is there any opportunity for the municipality to be engaged in that? And specifically, power seems to be an issue to be restored to some of those commercial sites. And anecdotally from owners, I have heard that the costs are excessively high from their perspective.
Mayor Ireland, if I could just begin an answer there, and perhaps Mr. Ireland will want to supplement it. I would just recall that in the spring we conducted a survey of commercial leaseholders impacted by the fire to identify some of the issues that were impeding their rebuilding of their properties or other struggles they might be having. That specific issue of connecting to non-municipal utilities was not a significant finding of that survey. And to that extent, it is not an issue that's sort of high on our priority list or on our radar. So I do appreciate you bringing it forward. As an agency or a department of the municipality focused on coordination and with connections to non-municipal utility providers, I think there is a role for us to play in trying to help commercial leaseholders navigate those challenges. So it's very helpful to have it brought forward to us. Have anything else?
Thank you for that. Other questions from councillors? I had then just one remaining one for your general presentation, Director Althoff, and it relates to your comment about unmet needs. And I believe I maybe asked this question in some form or another on earlier occasions, but we can calculate unmet needs based on people who have made applications and haven't been successful. Have you figured out any way to address unmet needs of those who haven't even had the capacity to get on a list? Like, I'm still very interested in how many members of the community have been displaced, continue to be displaced from the community, haven't even sought interim housing, maybe don't know the steps that would be required. It's a challenge for me to wrap my arms around how many of our community members are still flung far away and looking for an opportunity to get back, but aren't even on a list because they perhaps don't have the capacity to know how to get on a list.
Thank you for the question, Mayor Ireland. It is one of the great challenges, I think, of addressing unmet needs in a recovery context, in that we have very few ways of counting the people who are not currently in community and are not responsive to our outreach. And so we have, on a number of occasions, through social media and our regular communications channels, asked for displaced residents to complete surveys, to add their name to a contact list. We have offered programming and invited people to participate in virtual spaces. And to some extent, we have received feedback and connection from community members. For those who haven't taken us up on those offers, haven't added their names to email lists or completed surveys, I am similarly at a loss for how to connect with people who simply, for whatever reason, choose not to or are unable to respond to our outreach. I think that's probably the extent of the answer that I can give.
That's fair. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions from councillors, I will thank you both for the presentation, and I always appreciate hearing from you generally, and for the deep dives that you take us down on. Thank you. Councillor Melnick, a motion?
Yes, Your Worship. I would make the motion that we receive the interim Jasper Recovery Coordination Center progress report for information.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Melnick. So there's no debate. I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, Director's Report from the Director of Finance and Administration, Director Melanchuk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council. To just give you a brief highlight on the report, on the IT side of things, the wastewater treatment plant had their fuel master server upgraded. IT acceptable use policy and new IT ticket system for work orders have been implemented, and that's an internal system there. Office 365 training has been delivered, and additional staff training requests process is underway. And 2026 workstation replacement program has begun for the year. Under budget and planning, the 2025 audited financial statements were approved by Council on June 16th. The 2027 budget process officially launched with directors and managers, and draft operating and capital budgets have been distributed, and departments are updating business plans. On the side of grants, the 2026 federal and provincial funding have been confirmed. The Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF, was $335,053. The local government fiscal framework for capital side is $805,543. And the local government fiscal framework for the operating side is $123,552. Under staff development, the senior finance assistant has completed AMHSA health and safety training. Our accounts payable clerk has completed first stage certification, and staff have largely participated in the Microsoft Teams training. When it comes down to utilities and taxes, property taxes were due July 15th. So therefore, anything that is outstanding would now be receiving penalties. May and June utility bills were issued and already sent out and due August 24th. And work continues on transitioning utility building to a new water meter system. When it comes down to business licensing and customer services, 809 active business licenses have been renewed, or 94 of those have been new in the year. There has been increased seasonal activity for invoicing, paid parking support, and ticket payments. Wildfire recovery, we've completed the 2024 and 25 tax relief and revenue stabilization funding reports. The 24 was recorded in 24. However, there was updates that occurred during the audit process, and we went through that during the audited financial statements discussions. So those were resubmitted with their updates. Finalized disaster recovering program project listing was done, and we have reconciled more than $33.5 million in wildfire recovery expenditures to date. On communication side, we just like to remind residents to enroll in pre-authorized monthly payments to avoid penalties. Water meter replacement appointments continue, and information can be found on our website. And property taxes can now be paid by credit card. So that's something that new that we've implemented this year due to some requests. However, there is a 2.4 processing surcharge to be applied to that so that it doesn't impact taxes going forward, as that there are fees that we have to pay when we receive large amounts of money, of any kind of money. But so we're now doing that, but with that processing fee, should somebody want to do that. And then on the side of financials, we did reports up until the end of June. You can see that overall, for 50% of the year, the revenue we've actually attained is 58%. So we're a bit over target at this point. And for expenses, we're exactly at 50% for the end of June. Obviously, this changes. There's fluctuations. That's an overall. Obviously, there's some areas that are up, some areas that are down, but they'll level out as the year goes on. Some things get recognized just at the end of the year. So that's why you might see some numbers that are higher or lower because of the transactional pieces that occur for year end. On council side of expenses, we're sitting at 45% at 50% of the year. And as you can see with capital, we've spent $1.5 million to date. However, capital projects really just started to amp up in June, July. So those will change drastically over the next few months. And that's just a quick summary of the report. If there's any questions, then I'm available to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Melanchuk. Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Through you to Director Melanchuk. The one point that struck me in your operating budget was the urban design revenue. and expense. And I wonder if you could explain why such a large expense, 7.9 million as opposed to 3.2 revenue.
Your worship, through to Councillor Roger. Yes, so the revenue actually brought in for the year is 3.2 million so far of the 4.5 that's budgeted. And then the expenses, it's 7.9 compared to the 4.9. And that is due to, at the moment, the municipality is assisting with the JMHC build. And as they become more funded in their bank account, then we invoice over to them. So the same thing was happening last year, where they haven't received all of their funding. So as they get more and more into their bank account, we're able to invoice back to JMHC. So that's the difference that you're seeing at the moment. But overall, you're seeing that a lot of the revenue for urban design is actually received. Only 1.3 is remaining to receive for the rest of the year. We're actually sitting at 70% of revenue that we anticipated for the year at this point.
Further that, what does the revenue consist of that we're getting 3.2 million from urban design?
I believe that Director Saunders has sat down and able to assist with this answer.
Yes, through you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Roger. The bulk of that will be street and public space use permits. So all of the rebuild activity involves permits on public space. The bulk of it will be that. I will confirm and get back to you with specific numbers about that. And specific to the expense line, I've pulled the number that just under $7 million, so $6,983,767 are directly related to the JMHC build. And that's the municipality covering the cost. The funding is in place. We're just awaiting progress payments. And then, as Director Malinchuk mentioned, once those funds are in place, then the municipality will be sending invoices to JMHC, and that full amount, just sitting under $7 million, will be refunded.
So that money is coming from provincial government or federal government?
Both.
Both, okay. Okay, thanks.
Other questions for Director Malinchuk? Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. And not a question, but just something I wanted to raise, something I've experienced personally with our property taxes. And I think we may see this happening more as residents are moving back into rebuilt homes. And I pay my taxes on a monthly basis. So this would only affect that, which I know we're trying to encourage residents to do. But because assessments are based on the July assessment date, but taxes are collected in the calendar year, I was paying taxes monthly on my vacant lot up till July, and then my payments jumped like 3 times as much to catch up from those 6 months I wasn't paying. And I understand how it works, and I truly do get it. But I think a lot of residents are going to experience that same kind of sticker shock that I felt over the next few years as they rebuild and move in. And I just wonder if there's an opportunity to be proactive, whether it's allowing residents to pay into it more, or just even that we're communicating very clearly with people so they know to expect that increase if they move home before the calendar year starts. And it may be that the current system is the only option, but I think it is worth discussing now before more people get caught off guard.
Go ahead, Director Malinchuk.
Your worship, through to Councillor Hall. Thank you for that comment. We are working on that, and we plan on putting out some communication surrounding that. We haven't had many properties come online, so perfect opportunity to bring this up and discuss this. For those that are listening at this point, we can offer that people do come in and prepay. You can prepay onto your account, and then it will assist those payments going forward. But we will put out some communication on that so that maybe more people can be or see the communication behind that is an ability. You can prepay and have a credit sitting on your account to offset the larger payments coming up.
Would there be an opportunity to prepay monthly, like on a monthly basis as well, if they set that up through their account?
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hall.
Other questions for Director Malinchuk? Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and through you to Director Malinchuk. I wondered if you could, under business licensing invoicing, explain a little bit more what you mean by high volume for paid parking support and ticket payments.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Waxer. Just this time of year, the office becomes a bit more inundated with the extra business licensing coming through, as well as paid parking in questions, people calling in, or ticketing, processes. So it's just the office does become busier during this season. So it's just to recognize that the front desk has been very hopping along these days.
In the absence of other hands, I have a list of questions. Just beginning at the top of your report under budget and planning, you've indicated that departments are reviewing and updating their business plans. How robust are those business plans, and will they be presented to council during the budget process?
Thank you for the question, Your Worship. Yes, the plan is that they will be part of the budget process, and they will be part of the budget presentation to council and the public coming in November.
Thank you for that. In terms of grants, you have listed 2026 provincial grants. Is that CCBF a provincial grant or a federal grant?
Your Worship, sorry, I actually corrected that in my verbal to council. I noticed it as I was going through. CCBF is Canada Community Building, so that is the federal side.
Thank you for that. And I think you did, but I might have missed it. The 809 active business licenses, how does that compare to, say, last year and compare to pre-fire years? Is it about the same? Are we getting more businesses, fewer businesses?
Your Worship, I didn't pull the numbers as a comparison, so I don't have the exact answer. I believe that administration feels busier with the business license setup. There's more on the side of contractors and whatnot as well. So I would side on the side of that there are more than there were before.
Thank you for that. In terms of the wildfire response, you've indicated that you've reconciled just over $33.5 million. That's reconciled for DRP or HARP funding. So does that then mean that you still have 40 million to do, roughly speaking, if we're looking at 73.5 million as our DRP amount? I'm just wondering how long this challenging workload will remain for you if you're less than halfway now.
I believe that might be a better question for JRCC at this point. They have left the room, but they have a better idea because there is the finance side as well on the DRP, and they're not here to answer that question, but I would think that they would be better suited to answer that.
All right, thank you. In terms of the operating budget, and I appreciate that overall we are at, I think you said 58%, but skewed heavily by finance and administration receipts. So 19 million out of 22 million, which is significant. That's because we've passed the tax payment deadline, I presume. But we are noticeably below the budget amount, at least in percentage terms, for Jasper recovery revenue and operations revenue. What drives revenue in those departments, and why would it be significantly lower. So operations, for example, not quite 3 million out of 11.5 million. What is the source of that revenue, and why at half a year are we so much behind what appears to be, well, an average at least?
Thank you. That's a very good question. On both sides of the legislative and protective services and operations, they're behind. First of all, I'd like to note on the legislative and protective, it's more on the side of not having accounted for parking at the moment. So, we're always a month and a half to 2 months behind on recognizing that revenue. So that's why that number is lower than what it actually would be if we had that revenue recognized. On the operations side, it would be the utilities, and that will be stabilized by the revenue stabilization from the province. So you'll see a very low number at this time. One, because we haven't had the influx of tourism by this point as well. So we're always 2 months behind in our billing for water, sewer, garbage, and recycling. And also because of the decline in use, which I only do and all those calculations at the end of the year for the revenue stabilization on the amount that we lost from the destroyed properties.
So overall, no need to be concerned about it. It will all shake out by the end of the year.
I believe so. Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Balanchuk? Councillor Waxer.
Sorry, back to my original question about high volume for paid parking support. I just wanted to confirm that the addition of the kiosks and that has made it easier for people, and if there's anything else that's driving support for people to park and pay for it.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Waxer. I believe the kiosks do help to an extent. However, the amount of use compared to the other forms of being able to record your parking, enter into the app, or to just scan the QR code is significantly way less use than those methods. But they are there and do help the people that might not have the means of being able to pay. There are always some operational problems with either the kiosks where people might not be able to get at work one day, or they're having issues with also their phone or their payment, whatnot. So there's all those other things that might come to play as well for those calls that might come to the administration office.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that we have a fairly smooth and smoothly running operation.
Yes, I believe so at this point. It's a lot better than when we first started, for sure. Improvements every year.
Okay, and that there are less issues for individuals trying to pay.
Right.
If there are no further questions for Director Malinchuk, I will thank her for her director's report and look for a motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Waxer? Thank you very much. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Director Malinchuk. That takes us to agenda item 6.3. The Jasper Encroachment Bylaw. And that is a bylaw that has received first and second reading from council and certification from the superintendent, and is therefore here for third reading. So I would invite a councillor to make a motion for council to read for the third time bylaw number 286, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to address encroachments on municipal lands in the town of Jasper. Councillor Hall, that is your motion. Thank you for that. Is there any debate on the motion? Does anybody wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Arlen. And through to Mr. Gibbon, was this the bylaw that we were going to have some rewording done?
Mayor Ireland, for Councillor Roger, yes, it is. The draft that's here in front of Council, I believe, incorporates the rewording. Looking at the minutes, there was a suggestion of a small change at just after first reading. Council incorporated that change and then passed a motion for second reading with the changes proposed. Then it went away to Parks, incorporating the change that Council put forward. There was another bylaw that Council was considering, the Records Management Bylaw, which had more extensive changes, and that'll be coming forward at a later date.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? If not, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.4, which is a series of borrowing bylaws. Again, I think we have received certification from the superintendent with respect to each of these bylaws. And I think in each case, first reading was in early June and second reading was early July, but both have received first and second reading and certification. So I could begin with bylaw number 281, which is the issuance of a debenture in the amount of $1.9 million for the purpose of the Jasper Recreation Complex renovation phase 3. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion for third reading of that bylaw? Councillor Waxer?
Shall I read it? Okay. That Council read for the third time bylaw number 281, being a bylaw of the Municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize Council to incur indebtedness by the issuance of debenture in the amount of $1,900,000 for the purpose of the Jasper Recreation Complex renovation phase 3.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. The next matter before us is bylaw number 282. That is for the issuance of a debenture in the amount of $3.2 million for the purpose of the wastewater treatment facility renovations and upgrades. Councillor Roger.
The council read for the third time bylaw 282, being a bylaw of the Municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize council to incur indebtedness by the issuance of debenture in the amount of $3,200,000 the purpose of wastewater treatment facilities renovations and upgrades.
Thank you for the motion, Councillor Roger. Pardon me, Deputy Mayor Roger. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to bylaw number 283, $776,705 for the servicing of Arnica Avenue. And I would look for a motion for third reading. Councillor Frechette.
Let council read for the third time bylaw number 283, being a bylaw of the Municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize council to incur indebtedness by the issuance of a debenture in the amount of $776,705 for the purpose of servicing Arnica Avenue.
Thank you, Councillor Frechette. Does anybody wish to speak to that motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And that takes us to bylaw number 284 for a debenture in the amount of $4 million for the purpose of servicing wildfire-affected water and wastewater infrastructure, part of the deep dive from earlier today. Again, I would look for a motion from a councillor. Councillor Roger.
The council read for the third time bylaw 284, being a bylaw of the Municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize council to incur indebtedness by the issuance of debenture in the amount of $4 million for the purpose of servicing wildfire-affected water and wastewater infrastructure.
Thank you for that motion, Deputy Mayor Roger. The absence of hands signifying anybody wishes to speak to the motion, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes care of the borrowing bylaws. Agenda item 6.5, unsolicited donations. Policy, this comes forward by way of recommendation from Committee of the Whole, I think from July 14th, our last meeting date. A policy just to deal with money that people send us out of the goodness of their hearts. And I would look for a motion for council to approve policy B 128, unsolicited donations policy as presented. Councillor Frechette, thank you for that motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Takes us to agenda item 6.6. This has to do with the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation, the Audited Services RFP award. Again, I think this comes to council by way of recommendation from Committee of the Whole from our last meeting on July 14th. Do I have a councillor prepared to make a motion that council approve the award of the 5-year audit service agreement to M&P for the term of August 1st, 2026 to July 31st, 2031? Councillor Hall, thank you for that motion. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Moving to agenda item 6.7, Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation again, or still. And this is a motion or two recommendations from Committee of the Whole. One to authorize the annual written shareholder resolution as presented and to receive the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation annual report and audited financial statements. Just before I call for or ask for a motion, are there any outstanding questions from any councillors respecting the material, including the reports that are before us? If not, I have a general inquiry, and I will address it to administration, recognizing that it might be better addressed to the auditors, but I'm just trying to get a level of understanding and comfort. And if I look at the financial page of the report, that's on page 99 of our electronic agenda. The second paragraph, and again, it's dealing with audited financial statements, so it's a little bit different than budget or anything else, but it talks about the fact that the Parks Canada lease, or at least the value of that lease, and $3.7 million in other funding are indicated as deferred capital contributions. And the final sentence of that paragraph says the contributions will be recognized as revenue over the life of the assets. So assuming that the lease is a 42-year lease, if I add those numbers, and I don't know whether it should include, like whether the asset includes the value of the improvements, but that is $5.6 million approximately, divided by the term of the asset, which might be 42 years. That's $135,000 annually. And I don't understand how that is recognized as revenue and whether it makes any difference in the ongoing operation of the JMHC. So it'll be recognized as revenue apparently in the audited financial statements. But if it's recognized as revenue in a real sense, it is not going to be revenue. That it is not going to be money coming in. And I just want some comfort that the JMHC is not going to be relying on revenue that fits an audited financial statement format, which is different than what we do in the public realm. As I understand, these financial statements seem to be different. But to recognize that contribution as revenue causes me some concern about how that impacts, say, cash flow. And I just don't want to see us get trapped in some way. And so again, I appreciate that this is not necessarily administration's role, but I don't follow it. And I do note that the land lease amount shows up on page 108 as, what is it called there? It's investing activities. It doesn't show precisely as revenue. And on another page, I think it's 112, in a note about leases, they try to explain in a way that I don't understand. It says at least commencement, but it means at least commencement, I'm sure. And it discusses how the right of use value is incorporated. And I find it far too confusing for my non-financial mind. If it is a concern, I would be happy to get directed to the auditor to chat about it. But if anybody can give me comfort, I'm happy to leave it alone.
Mayor Ireland, I don't know that I can necessarily give you that comfort, or Director Malinchuk, that she obviously doesn't deal with the Housing Corporation's audited financial statements. That is part of my responsibility as CEO of the corporation. I will maybe oversimplify, and if we'd like something maybe in between with more of a technical expert, then that's where we would call the auditor and ask them to present maybe a bit of an education session for any interested members of the council. But the simple fact is, no, administration does not count on this amortization of the recognition of the value of the lease or the property that has been contributed by Parks Canada as an operating revenue. Maybe the easiest way to look at that, and again, I'm stepping out of my area of expertise a little bit here, but if I look at the statement of net income and other comprehensive income, you'll see the bottom line, which is the sort of overall bottom line for the corporation for the year of an $18,000 deficit. And that's reported in the Treasurer's report. You'll see that we're not recognizing revenue or income related to that amortization or that deferred capital contribution. So no, we're not imagining that there is income coming from that. It's just the treatment that's required of this contributed asset and how it starts to appear in the corporation's books over time. If council would like a more detailed explanation, or administration would be happy to organize the auditors to work through that, or we could send them an email and ask them if they could provide a written response. But I can give you, Mayor Ireland, the confidence that administration isn't planning the operations of GMHC with the assumption that there's some additional cash coming in every year, which is not actually cash.
I think that is sufficiently satisfying. I do note that 3.5 million is included as a liability. So I take it when it's deferred, that liability gets paid out over the term of the lease. And so that's where the revenue goes. And it's just a balancing thing. But it's still a scary thought to think that there is the potential for revenue to be recorded, which is not real revenue coming in at all. Anyway, if no other councillor is concerned, and more importantly, administration of the JMHC understands this and won't be deluded into thinking there is money coming in that isn't, then I'm happy.
Maybe, Mayor Ireland, just to follow up on that point, I just would want to bring council and the public's attention to the independent auditor's report, which is pages 102 and 103 of the package, our council package today. And in essence, the auditor, independent of the corporation or of municipal administration, identifies that the financial statements present fairly in all material aspects of the financial position. So in accordance with the applicable standards. So we had an outside party assess the operation of the corporation. It is above board and consistent with practices for a corporation like this. And as you'll see in the treasurer's report, administration wasn't reporting that we had if we were seeing that as income, then we would have not had a deficit year that we did because of the startup nature of the corporation. So I can give you the confidence that we are not going to be misled by that, even though the financial treatment of it in the audit financial statements looks a little unusual.
I could add that I'm on the board, and we were explained everything by the auditor at a board meeting, and everybody was satisfied. I really can't remember how it was explained at this point, but I maybe could find out and let you know.
All right. Thank you all for indulging me on that. I will then return to, I think we were at agenda item 6.7, and there is a recommendation coming forward from Committee of the Whole. So I would look for a councillor to make a motion authorizing the resolution, the written shareholder resolution, and to receive the annual report for information. Councillor Hall, thank you for that. Ms. Acorn, you're happy with that degree of precision, and it is the recommendation is as listed on the agenda sheet. So I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, which takes us to agenda item 6.8, records retention and disposition bylaw, which comes back to us after having been returned to Director Nadon for a little bit, who has miraculously appeared before us. The timing couldn't be better. So if you want to speak to it, Director Nadon, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am indeed back with the bylaw, and we worked with our lawyers to get the current revisions. So the document you're seeing in the agenda package is our lawyers' recommendations of how to make this bylaw a bit more clarifying some of the questions that were brought forward last time. And essentially, you will see that there was an addition of a definition for municipal records. So the definition of records themselves is still there, but there's some clarity around a municipal record, so being under the custody or control of the municipality and how it's created. So the addition of that definition is probably one of the main highlights. There's also an addition of a definition for a records hold. CO Given and I thought that the way this bylaw was presented, with the red text being struck out and the blue text being added, was a good way to present it to you so you could see exactly what was changed. Under section 4 scope, that's where we addressed the provincial and federal legislation. So before, that was sort of buried in section 7. It was a different item altogether, but this was included just to make sure that it was quite clear that any provincial or federal legislation would supersede this bylaw or any schedules approved in the context of this bylaw. And then section 4.4 also adds some clarity around records that are in the possession of that are in control or possession of a party other than the municipality. So mostly contractors, but also some clarity on that front added in that more overarching section. And then everything else you see, the discussion I had with the lawyer is that the bylaws it was previously would have served its purpose, would have gotten us through to having the CAO approve some schedules and would have supported the operation of the program. But there's just a bit more clarity on some of those key items here. And we did discuss it at length. Also, there was a question about adding fines or penalties to the bylaw and why this one doesn't have one. And the lawyer essentially supported what was presented to council previously, that the individuals that are dealing with those records are either municipal staff or people that are hired through a contract or in a volunteer sort of fashion. So there are other mechanisms in place to ensure that people comply that are not the typical fines or tickets that you would find in some other bylaws. So quite a few changes before second reading, but because council had given it first reading already, our only opportunity is to come back at regular. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dodon, and thank you for the lengthy changes, which, from my perspective at least, help clarify it, although perhaps it was all there to begin with. Are there questions for Ms. Nadon? Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Nadon. I wondered if you could, I was just looking at Article 11 around historical records. What type of thing would fall into that category? It may be a question for the CAO, but for instance, say the establishment of the municipality of Jasper might be a historical record, or I just was curious what would trigger that.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Waxer, there is a definition of a historical record earlier on in the bylaw, and it says a municipal record, not just a record, a municipal record designated for permanent preservation because of its historical, evidential, archival, or cultural value. And Ms. Acorn and I had run into that somewhat regularly, where who should make that decision? There's a bit of discretion in this area, and actually in discussion with CAO given in the first version of the bylaw, he suggested that maybe council should be allowed or have a role to play in determining what those are. There was a discussion with the lawyer. I'm just going back to section 11. The CAO may bring forward recommendations to council to designate records as historical. And then the new clause that was added is that council has the authority to designate records as historical. So confirming that council has the authority, but the CAO also may bring forward, so not must. So I think this highlights overall the purpose of this bylaw. We are developing our records management program. We are behind on this file. And also the discussion I had with the lawyer is that this bylaw will have to be revisited in a year, 2 years, 3 years. As we expand the program, as we work on the file, we'll find some things work and some things don't. But this should provide us the framework that we need to make the progress we need to make at this time.
Thank you for that.
On that same topic, historical records and the designation of such. So the CAO may bring forward a recommendation, and then it would be up to council to designate. So right now, or if we pass this, is it a bylaw? Yes, it's a bylaw. There will be nothing which is designated historical until we take that position, correct? So anything could potentially be destroyed. So if we do think that there are documents with historical archival significance, we probably should get on it. Unless the intent is just to hold everything until we get our legs under us.
Mayor Ireland, I would say just an example of what we run into when we try to operate the program. You run into a document and it's pretty clearly historical, right? Like if one thing we're playing it safe, we're going the other way around. We're keeping more than we should, perhaps. And so anything that has currently administratively been deemed historical would probably need to come forward to council and be recognized as such. And I think part of the process here as well is that council recognizes that keeping those records and maintaining those records and preserving them is a more accurate definition requires some staff time and administrative resources. So what is deemed as historical, if the list keeps growing, then we might need more resources to keep them as such. So that's more so where we're at. So we're quite cautious and quite conscientious in not destroying anything that could be deemed as historical.
Thank you. Initially, this matter was before us. I think we gave it first reading and then suggested amendments. Those amendments have now come back and it's here for second reading. So subject to questions that councillors may have for administration, I would invite a motion to give second reading to bylaw number 285. Councillor Waxer.
The council read for the second time bylaw number 285, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to regulate the retention and disposition of records.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So that will go off for certification and come back for third reading in due course. That takes us to agenda item 7, notices of motion, of which there are none. Which takes us to agenda item 8, councillor reports. Does any councillor have anything to report? Councillor Frechette.
Yes, I've had a number of meetings with the Community in Bloom committee of late. The one on the 24th of July, putting together some of the day's program for the judging that will be entered into on September 10th. I had a further meeting on Friday, I think it was the 1st of August, to nail down our itinerary for the day. As you may know, as council, we have we've re-entered into the provincial judging for Community in Bloom this year. Very excited about it. We've got a wonderful day planned for the 10th of September, and the exact agenda will be distributed to council and to administration regarding the day's events. So do keep that on your agenda. We will bring you up to speed on it as we get closer. That's all I have.
Thank you. Other reports? Councillor Waxer.
Yes, last Friday I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony for the interim housing modular units in Hinton. I just wanted to express appreciation to the Evergreens Foundation for managing that. This was units that were prepared as interim housing for those people, I believe, displaced from Pine Grove Manor. There were a couple of residents for these new modular units in attendance. And I had one particularly striking conversation with a resident who had been displaced with family members in London, Ontario, and was able to move back to the area in a little one-bedroom unit with a backyard and a storage shed and a driveway, and they had a real sense of peace that they were able to be back. So I thought it was important to mention that. I also attended the JPL reopening and the launch of their memorial for their 2024 wildfire on earlier in the month.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have the opportunity on July 22nd to participate in a FCM webinar regarding Canada Post Services, and just concerned that there may have been potential changes to how our community is serviced by Canada Post, and there was nothing in the webinar that I saw. It deals mostly with expanding more mailboxes out into other rural communities. So I think I'm not worried about Canada Post at this point in our community. As well, on the 29th of July, I attended the Jasper Partnership Initiative meeting with His Worship, and that would be it for my reports.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Other reports? I will report briefly, I hope. Along with other councillors, I attended the July 22nd barbecue hosted by JRCC, and I just endorse all that Director Althoff had to say about the benefit of that particular gathering. But I'd also like to take this opportunity to credit JRCC for bringing it together, but also Parks Canada, which really demonstrated the continuing collaborative approach. And so they were very well represented in hosting the community with the municipality and JRCC. It was a great event. I attended with a couple of other councillors, including Councillor Waxer and Melnick, and I think Councillor Consgrud, to that commemorative event at Jasper Park Lodge. And on July 29th, in addition to attending the Jasper Partnership Initiative meeting on that day with Councillor Melnick, Councillor Waxer and I attended a presentation at the Jasper Food Bank where Amazon came to town with 17 individuals, came up from Edmonton just to show support for the Jasper Food Bank and the donations that they had collected. So across Canada, Amazon employees, as I understand it, collected 2 truckloads of goods for the Jasper Food Bank, way more in volume than the local food bank can accommodate. So they are being stored at Food Bank in Leduc and come out as needed locally. But the show of support from the Amazon workers was also spectacular, and they are credited with time. So they were each credited with the driving time from Edmonton to Jasper and back, and that may then translate to a monetary contribution from the corporation. So it was a really significant event, and thanks to those Amazon employees for supporting our local food bank. And that is it for my report. If there are no further reports, we have a list of upcoming events. And is there any other upcoming events which should be brought to the attention of council? Councillor Frechette?
Yes, just to reiterate, the Community in Bloom judges will be in town on September 10th, and there will be a meet and greet at tentatively at Earl's Restaurant, and of course they in the back room, I think, and they will have 2 provincial judges in town, and of course we would love to have you introduced to all of them and get to know them and maybe get a little update on where we're going in Jasper's next number of years with the Community in Bloom committee. Been very active, and it's going to be a terrific day, a full day of judging, and you'll get a chance to get a little more up to speed on what the Community in Bloom provincial judging is all about. So we'll keep you up to date on more of the details, and truly hope that all of you can join us for that evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frechette. And assuming there is no further business, I would look for a motion that the regular meeting of August 4th, 2026 be adjourned at 3:03 p.m. Councillor Hall was the first one to make that motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We are adjourned. We'll see you all, Committee of the Whole, 9:30 a.m. next Tuesday, August 11th.